And all right, we're going to pick up on the Declaration of Independence from the place where we had left off. And I am going to share my screen. And we were exactly at this point. Everybody can see the grievances screen there?
Yeah.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
We were at the point of having looked at a number of the other, a number of grievances having to do with you aren't letting us have a government. And now, because you aren't letting us have a government, we have violence against the people. These are the violences that have occurred against the people because of this. And Marty, the first word there, or the only word there.
Perfidy. Perfidy.
Perfidy.
Perfidy. Treacherous dishonesty. Not to be trusted.
In other words, treason.
Right.
All right, Christian, I have you as my next person on the thing here. If you want to read the first grievance there.
Is my mic working?
Yes.
Yes, it is.
Oh, good. Okay. First grievance. He has abdicated government here by declaring us out of his protection and waging war against us.
Waging war against us. And there were, I recall that the town of Portsmouth, Massachusetts, before it became Maine, was shelled by the British Navy and leveled.
Wow.
That's kind of war against us, you know?
Yeah, I'd say.
All right, Teresa, next one.
He has plundered our seas, ravaged our coasts, burnt our towns, and destroyed the lives of our people.
And I just gave an example of that, okay?
Keep going or what?
Oh, no, we're fine. I'm going to go on to Joel.
Okay.
Thank you. Joel.
Yeah. He is at this time transporting large armies of foreign mercenaries to complete the works of death, desolation, and tyranny, already begun with circumstances of cruelty and perfidy, scarcely paralleled in the most barbarous ages, and totally unworthy the head of a civilized nation.
Good. Really sticking it to him.
Howard, here, question.
Yeah.
What did Portsmouth, Massachusetts do to the king?
It was part of Massachusetts.
So he's just taking out his displeasure against Boston on Portsmouth.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know in particular exactly what they did. It may have been that they were fishing for cod that they didn't want them to, or perhaps they were using sailing vessels and doing shipping that's not on British lines. I don't know. But
all right.
It almost kind of doesn't matter. You know, it's ravaging our coasts. All right, Howard,
Okay.
you next.
Where's our place here?
Yeah, here we go.
Okay, got it. He has constrained our fellow citizens taken captive.
All right. Sorry.
All right. He has constrained our fellow citizens taken captive on the high seas to bear arms against their country, to become the executioners of their friends and brethren, or to fall themselves by their hands.
Good. So this was the this was the taking, because these were British subjects. If an American ship was taken, the British considered that these were rebels in rebellion, and they were really British subjects, and so they could impress them into being into service in the King's Navy. And
You use the word service rather than slavery.
Yeah, right.
Right, exactly. Bob Zink.
Let's see. He has
Yeah.
excited domestic insurrections amongst us and has endeavored to bring on the inhabitants of our frontiers, the merciless Indian savages, whose known rule of warfare is an undistinguished destruction of all ages, sexes, and conditions.
Okay. That kind of speaks for itself. It should be noted, however, that some of the Indians learned that savagery from the white man. It just because in the 1630s, the Narragansett Indian tribe was at war with the Pequots. The Pequots were a larger tribe, and the Narragansett were chafing under their rule. So they enlisted the aid of the British, the Massachusetts Boston colony, to help them to beat the Pequots. So the British and the Narragansetts marched against the Pequots, and the usual method of Indian warfare was when you showed up, the other tribe either put up a fight, or they saw that they couldn't, they wouldn't be able to win, and so they'd lay down their arms. They'd run away, and you kind of took that as being okay. You've won the war. However, when they came to the Pequot big encampment on the Connecticut River, the Pequots, a number of the Pequots ran away because it was pretty obvious that they had lost. They were not going to be able to beat these guys. But the British, the American colonists, blocked all the gates, blocked all of the ways out of the encampment, and then set fire to it and killed them all. It was indistinguished destruction of all ages, sections, and conditions. And the Narragansett looked at that and they said, wow, if we'd known that you were going to do that, we would not have joined up with you. And they did spread the word to the other tribes that these guys are pretty bad. So at any rate, so there's always back and forth. And this is a political document designed to raise emotions and get people to join the cause. And by making a statement like this, which was true, because this was 150 years later, they now, they had now taken on doing that as well. But I just thought, I thought I would like you to know that it wasn't because the Indians were that, well, actually, my understanding is the Iroquois were kind of like that, but the Narragansetts and the Pequots were not. At any rate, so this was one of the things that the king has excited domestic insurrection and brought the inhabitants of the frontiers, the merciless Indian savages, to do this. All right.
Yep.
All right, and let's see. I think now we're going to go to. That's actually the end of the end of the grievances. That's the list of the grievances.
Oh.
And so now that we've listed these grievances, we're going to show that we've actually attempted to reconcile this. It's not like we're just grievancing and we haven't tried to do something about it. And keywords in this section is, all I have here is redress, which is to set something right. So Marty, why don't you read this first paragraph?
Okay. In every stage of these oppressions, we have petitioned for redress in the most humble terms. Our repeated petitions have been answered only by repeated injury. A prince whose character is thus marked by every act which may define a tyrant is unfit to be the ruler of a free people. True.
Okay. All right, good. Next down, Teresa. If nobody has any questions, we're ready to move on. Okay. Hearing none. Teresa, I may stop you in the middle of this.
Okay. And redress sought from the people of Britain.
Okay.
Nor
Oh,
have
yeah.
we.
Excuse me, yes, notice in that first paragraph is, we've attempted to redress with the king. And he's not doing it. So now we've attempted to redress with the people themselves. Okay, so go ahead. I'm sorry for that.
Oh, that's okay. Nor have we been wanting in attentions to our British brethren. We have warned them from time to time of attempts by their legislature to extend an unwarrantable jurisdiction over us. We have reminded them of the circumstances of our emigration and settlement here. We have appealed to their native justice and magnanimity.
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 Magnanimity. They're
Magnanimity.
big-heartedness. I probably should have that as a word also. Their big-heartedness. Their willingness to be reasonable, and so on. Okay. Go ahead.
And we have conjured them by the ties of our common kindred to disavow these usurpations, which would inevitably interrupt our connections and correspondence.
Okay, so they have done, we have tried to speak to the people of Britain as well. And yet, what's next?
They too have been deaf to the voice of justice and of consanguinity. Consanguinity.
Consanguinity, exactly. Right. Of the same blood. Our brotherhood, we have the same blood.
Okay. We must therefore acquiesce in the necessity which denounces our separation and hold them as we hold the rest of mankind, enemies in war, in peace, friends.
Good. All right.
Well, would that have meant in practicality contacting members of Parliament?
Well, they did that.
Probably it would have.
Okay.
Probably it would have. And also, I'm sure that many, John Hancock had business friends throughout in Britain as well as I'm sure Washington, Washington, Jefferson, other people, just knew people in Britain, and they would have said, hey, what can we do about this? That kind of thing.
Okay.
But wasn't Franklin over there during a good deal of this time?
Yes.
Attempting to handle things
Yes.
with a wide variety of people.
Yes, I believe so. So. All right. Therefore, having all of this long train of usurpations, which we have detailed, and having attempted to reconcile it, therefore, we are going to have to do something else. And Joel, you want to go ahead and give us all three of these words?
Rectitude, how right something is, how correct or proper. Allegiance, loyalty to a person or thing, to owe defense, friendship, or the like to another. Divine providence, God will provide.
Good. So, all right, we ready to go on?
Yep.
Mhm.
All right. I am going to, who is next? Bob Zink. I'm going to have you read just this part right here.
We, therefore, the representatives of the United States of America in General Congress, assembled appealing to the Supreme Judge of the world for the restitude of our intentions, do in the name and by authority of the good people of these colonies, solemnly publish and declare.
All right. So we're going to have to declare something because of all this stuff that we've just talked about. We're now going to have to declare something. And we're saying who we are that's making this declaration. And Howard?
Yes. Read.
I'm going to have you read down to that sentence. Big old sentence right there.
Thank you. Is that all one sentence? Holy cow. Yes, it is.
Yep.
Wow. That these united colonies are, and of right, ought to be free and independent states. That they are absolved from all allegiance to the British Crown, and that all political connection between them and the state of Great Britain is and ought to be totally dissolved,
Mm.
and that as free and independent states, they have full powers to levy war, conclude peace, contract alliances, establish commerce, and to do all other acts and things which independent states may of right do.
All right, so
Right.
at this point, this is the declaration. We are now at this point declaring our independence. And this is the operative sentence. This is the one that makes the declaration. We are our own selves. However, we have to have, there's just one little thing, because we can make that declaration, but that doesn't make it true. Then we have this final piece, which I'm going to ask Christian to read, which is right there.
And for the support of this declaration, with a firm reliance on the protection of divine providence, we mutually pledge to each other our lives, our fortunes, and our sacred honor.
And that's how it's going to be enforced. And this is right here a pledge of allegiance. We are pledging allegiance to each other, not to a flag, not to the republic for which it stands, nothing of the sort. It's just to each other. I did a neat little 3-minute, 4-minute video on that called 4th of July, the original Pledge of Allegiance. And it basically points out this. And this, well, I don't know. Now I'm going to open it up, because we've now finished this, and there's one last thing that I'd like to do before we actually finish this meeting. But before I do that, I'm going to open it up. Anybody have any comments? Congratulations, you've finished. We read through the entire Declaration of Independence.
Great.
Nice.
What was the feedback from Britain when this was published and sent over there? Do you have any idea? Anybody have any idea what reaction? Did they laugh at us, or did they go, holy smokes, they're serious?
They already had troops over here.
Yep.
Good point.
I think they just said, well, that's the Americans being the Americans. Could have been more. I don't know. Howard, you usually know things like that.
What exactly is the question?
The question is, once the declaration was published and sent over to Britain, what was the reaction over there? If you have any idea.
Oh, the reaction in Britain?
Yes.
I do not know, but I think I would look to the history and see what battles ensued following 4th of July, 1776. That you could consider their response, perhaps, maybe.
Yeah.
But no, I don't know the specific time track of what the Brits did next, or what the king did next.
Yeah. All we know is that to read John Hancock's signature, he didn't need his glasses.
That's quite a signature, isn't it?
Yeah, it is.
Beautiful signature. Holy cow.
Yeah.
And
boy,
the
I
one,
think you just teach how to write in school these days like that.
Mhm.
and the one thing that's really incredible about this document is here is where we become, instead of colonies, we move from colonies to individual states, 13 states.
Yep.
And a state was equivalent to the state of England, the
Yep.
state of Germany, the state of France. Each state was equal in its powers to those of other states.
Right.
And we united all of these separate states.
We were united in war, but each of
More.
them, each of them, as it talks about here, is free and independent states, and they have the power to levy war, conclude peace, contract alliances, establish commerce, and do all the other acts and things which independent states may have a right to do.
That's right.
And the thing, power to levy war, conclude peace, contract alliances, and establish commerce are the four things in particular that, I mentioned before the book, The Law of Nations, which
Yeah.
the founders here they were all very familiar with it. It was the first look at what is a nation and what are the things that a nation can do. And what Vattel talked about in particular was these four things: levying war, concluding peace, contracting alliances, and establishing commerce. That's, this is almost lifted directly out of his book. These are the things that a state can do.
Definition of sovereignty, is it not?
A definition?
It's the definition of sovereignty, isn't it?
Yes, right. Exactly right. Exactly right.
Yeah, it's a statement of what independent states can and do for themselves.
Right.
Hmm.
All right. I would like.
Who wrote the Law of Nations?
I'm sorry.
Who wrote the Law of Nations?
Vattel.
Yeah, Vattel. Vittel, as I recall.
Thank you.
Yep.
Christian's gonna go get his.
He was a Swiss fellow.
There you go.
Oh, there you go. Good.
Interesting. Yeah, Switzerland would have been a confederation at that point.
Yeah,
Just several provinces united together, common defense.
Right. I have the PDF. I downloaded the PDF. Chris has the book, the real book with real pages.
Really?
My gosh.
I have a very large library and I'm very, very proud of it. So
Yes. Yes. And I have a new addition to my library. I'm going to
What
show
is it?
everybody else. I had to show everybody else.
Yeah.
I want to take this out of stop sharing first. And Chris sent me this
Who?
Senate document. Christian.
Christian sent John.
Holy cow.
It is the Constitution of the United States with analysis and interpretation. It is a Senate document, and it is it's a great addition to my research library.
I have a 1938 version, and what it has in it that the other ones don't have in it is that it was made for the House of Representatives and the Senate for their reference. So whenever a congressman takes office, he's given one of these books.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah, and if you go to any presidential libraries and you look in their library on their shelves, you will find that book. Depending upon the year that it's made. They made, well, my 38 version says that they made 800 copies for use of the Senate. So, or no, for the House and the Senate. So I find them on eBay, and if I can grab them, I will, if they're not overly priced.
Yeah.
But if you go back in the earlier versions, they're not so, they're kind of cleaner spoken, you know.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, they convolute some stuff as you get into the newer and newer versions.
Yeah, I'm sure.
Yep.
So before we go on to something else, I wanted to do this. I'm going to share my screen again.
Are we having a test?
Yeah. This is your test.
Oh,
No, this is not a test.
I'm kidding.
All right, so you see this?
Oh, yes.
This is about a half-hour video. Every year, well, the last 3 years, we've had on the 4th of July, we have a little celebration in front of the county courthouse, and there are 6 of us are chosen to read sections of the Declaration of Independence, and we go all the way through the Declaration of Independence. And when each person gets their little part that they're supposed to read, like you see this fellow right here, this is Jonathan Knapp. He ran to be sheriff. He lost. He's going to run again. He will be a constitutional sheriff. But you see that he has he's given this, this is the section of the Declaration of Independence that he's going to read. And as we are all sitting over on the side and everybody's going over the piece they're going to read, they come to me and they say things like, "What does consanguinity mean?" Stuff like that.
Yeah.
Which is kind of cool, you know. So Jonathan Knapp is reading kind of about the part. Well, I'm just going to start it, and we have 9 minutes here, and I'm just going to let it roll without comment. After he's done, the fellow that's going to come up is a local radio announcer who is well known in the community, and he is introducing each of the people that does that's doing the reading. So I'm just going to start it. I'm going to let it go. Here we go.
Big volume.
You can raise your.
You don't have volume, John.
Yeah,
Matt can hear you at all.
Yeah.
I can't hear.
John,
This is the best he gets.
Well, you can raise the volume on your earphones, can't you? Oh boy, even at 100, it's
yeah.
not there.
Why don't you read it? Why don't you explain it, John?
I'm just reading it. I'm just reading it. I'm just reading what we just read.
You can actually find this on, I found this, I think it was either on YouTube or was it on your website, John, that this is?
Yeah, it's YouTube. It's a YouTube. This is a YouTube video.
Yeah.
That is on my YouTube and on the Josephine County Constitution Study Group channel. But I want. Reliance upon the protection of divine providence, mutually pledge to ourselves and each other our lives, our fortunes, and our sacred honor. The original Declaration of Independence, the original Pledge of Allegiance.
Mic drop.
So
You're a star, John, a star.
that's what we do in Josephine County. All right, so now we have now completed all this. Listen, we have a half an hour. You want to right now do the I think we should, but I think we'll do what do you think would be good amendments to have to the Constitution right now? What amendments would you propose? Yeah. Lisa's smiling.
You know, I'm going to just say something for whatever it's worth. Many moons ago, I had a friend who said that, and I never questioned. I just went, oh, he said that in the Roman times, that all laws passed became null after 20 years, and they had to be repassed. I never, ever inspected that, but it sort of made sense to me. And it's just always been in the back of my mind. Do you know anything about that? I just,
No, I don't know anything about that, but, and you know what? For our purposes for right now, it doesn't really matter because we can just propose, that would be an interesting amendment.
It's
Wouldn't
funny because that's basically what I was gonna say, that we need to review all of everything in a new unit of time, especially these amendments like the 16th amendment, you know, the tax and all that kind of
yeah,
crap. There's so much, and taking the senators out of the state and putting them into popular vote, you know, those things we should actually, I'd like to repeal a bunch of those.
Okay. All right.
Me too.
All right. So I like, 'cause I do like that, a sunset law. What do you think about that, Christian?
I like it. I don't know. I don't think that that's I don't think that's necessarily the problem, but I like the idea of revisiting every law because
Yeah.
I've tried to read them all and I can't, there's no way I'll ever get through it in my lifetime.
Right. Right. Okay. All right. Good. All right. I like that idea.
it really would keep things simpler. They get so you know, if you keep the same rate of grow, there will reach a point where it will be ridiculous, you know, where nobody can. So there, I can see a sense to it. And I've never inspected it. I've never looked it up. I never questioned it. He was a brilliant, you know, he was a very intelligent person. So I don't know where he got that datum.
Yeah. Well, again, it doesn't really matter. It really doesn't matter to us because all we're
Okay.
doing is we're looking at what would be better governance for us, and
Yeah.
having laws sunsets, not a bad idea. Not a bad.
Yeah.
idea.
How-
What about having an amendment or whatever, that every bill that goes through Congress can be one subject? In other words, you can't have a bill on
Yep.
whatever and then throw in
Amen.
doing a bridge,
Omnibus bills.
you know,
No
Oklahoma.
piggybacking. No piggybacking, right?
Yeah,
Yeah. I like that.
Yeah, it would make pork barreling much more difficult. That's a good idea. I like that one. I like that one.
I
What's
think
another
the
one?
most important one we could do is we could amend clause 2 of section 8 of article 1. Article 2 says, clause 2 says to Congress shall have the power to borrow money on the credit of the United States.
Yeah.
Mm.
I think that clause was too open and I think it needed to be refined, what its purpose was and what it really should be, because it's gone off the rails.
Yeah.
Well, actually, the purpose for that was in clause 1, which is to
Pay the debts,
lay and collect taxes for the purpose of
common defense and the general welfare.
common defense and the general welfare, which is what is named, specifically named on in clause 8, and that is all that it's supposed to be for. Okay, all right, cutting the borrowing. I don't know that I would agree with that because there are times when you have to, you got somebody breathing down. You got a warrant that just came around the corner, and you got to.
I don't think they should cut it. I think it just needs to be refined. It needs to be amended because
Okay. All right. Okay. All right. Somehow refining the power to borrow. Okay, I'll go along with that. Somehow refining it. That's good. Okay, Marty, did you have your hand up?
I did. I think we should restrict the president's use of alphabet soup bureaucracies.
Okay, there's a problem with that, and that is that it is not the president that makes those agencies.
Well, they're under they're in the administration,
Yeah,
under the office.
but they are created by Congress. Congress is
Are
the
they?
one. Yes, Congress is.
Because I thought Nixon created the EPA.
No, he
Congress
suggested.
did, he just signed it into law.
He just suggested it, and then he said, I believe that he suggested it, and then he signed it, and
Well, I think that ought to go.
Well, the EPA, well, yeah, okay.
Well, no, all of those, all these unelected bureaucrats, they
Yeah.
can't be, we can't have all these unelected bureaucrats. It's just not
Yeah.
constitutional. They're not who represent us. We don't know who they represent.
Uh,
Right,
the
okay.
government.
Hang on, Howard, hang on, just, were you gonna address that in particular?
Yeah, he
Howard?
was.
No, but that's who they benefit. They benefit the government, the bureaucracy, give all these parasites jobs.
Well, actually, what it is Congress says, for instance, Congress says, we need to build a road. And they just say, build a road from Philadelphia to Newark, of all places.
Well, the federal interstate highway system.
Howard, hang on. And then they say, they hand it over to the executive and they say, build the road. And the executive hires people to build the road. And those people that he hires to build the road say, we have to dig doing this, and we're going to use the best kind of shovel to use for this is a number 10 shovel, and that goes into the Federal Register, right, Chris?
Right.
That number 10 shovels are what's being is what's going to be used, and they make regulations doing that. Now, unfortunately, what's happened is that they've started making regulations for you and me, not for the agencies themselves. The regulations are supposed to be for the agencies. They tell them how to do their jobs, not us telling us how to do our jobs. Christian, you correct me anytime I'm wrong.
No, I agree. The regulations are there specifically to inform you of how that agency is going to interpret and implement the law.
Right, exactly. But there's nothing. See, there's nothing inherently wrong with an administration, and there's nothing inherently wrong with the government having a surveyor, the government having a tax collector, the government having employees doing things. The problem is that they become too powerful amongst themselves.
Right.
And perhaps what we can do is we can have a constitutional amendment that says that government employees are not allowed to collectively bargain or unionize.
Well, that
Very
should
good.
be true.
That would be nice.
And that would be that would rein in that power.
Yeah.
So we could have a law. So we could do an amendment like that. That would be an amendment that we could do.
Okay.
But,
Right.
your EPA.
I'm sorry.
But your EPA is your federal EPA has its purpose, and as do a lot of these agencies. The EPA would be the only agency that could regulate the Mississippi River if pollutants are going into it and it's traveling from state to state. One state might has their EPA and the other state has their other EPA, but they'd be in conflict. So
Right.
you have the federal EPA that has to mandate or regulate those kinds of things. So
And the original EPA in 1970, when it was signed into law, the purpose of it and what it did was it was to oversee the pollution that was being put off by government agencies and by cities and by counties and that sort of thing. Well, they cleaned that up real good, and then they looked around and they said, well, what else can we do now? And that's when they started going after things that were not government agencies. Now, Howard has been chomping at the bit, wanting to say something.
Well, I thought of another question regarding that. But my amendment would be to have 9 Supreme Court justices. Cannot change that.
Oh, okay. That's interesting. Okay. That's good. That's good. Okay. Like that one. You want me to tell you one of my favorites?
Yeah.
Sure.
My favorite is that you cannot contribute to a political campaign unless you can vote in that campaign.
I like that.
Ooh.
So that means that, number one, that means that unions and corporations cannot contribute at all because they are not people who can vote.
That's right.
That means that you cannot have out-of-state money coming in to
Yes.
to promote something or other. I mean, like in Oregon, all the money for legalizing marijuana came from out of state. Well,
Yeah.
not all the money, but 90% of it came from out of state, and it got passed here because of all that money that came from out of state. So anyway, that's one of my favorites, and that, by the way, actually, I can't take credit for it. Every time we would, when we have our local groups, and we have this meeting, and we're at the last stage of the meeting. Roy Lindsay, who before he started our course was just a guy, but he went through the Constitution with me a couple of times, and then after that, he got himself elected mayor of Grants Pass.
Wow.
Mayor of Grants Pass, you say?
Got mayor of Grants Pass. So
Cool.
So anyway, he that was his favorite. He always brought that one up. Is if you cannot contribute to a campaign unless you can vote in it.
I think our forefathers would very much agree with that one.
Yeah, I think so too, because it's all supposed to be local.
Yeah.
Any more?
Yeah, I've got another one, only somewhat facetious,
Okay.
which is that any legislator that's going to vote on a bill must attest that they have fully read the bill.
That's good.
That they have fully read the bill.
Yes, that they've read the bill. Absolutely, that they've read it.
Like so logical.
And
There was a whole documentary that somebody did of trying to go around, I think, to South Dakota to get that law passed. And it was just, it was a pretty hilarious documentary because of course it did not go over well. But it is, it is a very logical thing. These guys will vote on stuff they have no idea. They're 1,000-page long.
That's right.
Some of these bills. So.
Well, you have to pass it to find out what's in it, don't you know
That's
that?
right.
Exactly right. Exactly right.
How about an amendment to abolish the Fed, Federal Reserve System?
Oh, yes.
Wait. Bob is trying to say something here.
Yeah, I've got one for you. I propose that we do an amendment for an ID card for voting, so that
Okay.
you can't have dead people vote.
Okay.
Novel idea.
Okay.
And the other thing I did was kind of interesting. I sent this question out to a bunch of my friends who are, we do a political email, and we discuss different items and so forth. And I got basically 3 different ones back. 4 of them came back with the ID card.
Yeah.
4 of them came back for term limits.
Right.
And then 1 of them came back for term limits for judges, which is slightly different than the other one. So I thought that was kind of interesting. I had 9 people come back to me with their suggestions.
Right.
Well, the thing is, there are term limits for judges already, but we just have to, the term limit is under good behavior.
Yeah, good behavior.
The problem is it's not being enforced by the other branches.
Right. And I know when you sent that around, Bob, because I got a copy of it and I sent you my a link to my little essay they had done on the folly of term limits. That basically term limits don't work. I mean, if they worked, I'd be all for them, but they don't work.
They what?
They do not work. Term limits do not work. They are designed. They are designed to diminish the power of government, but in the essay I give 2 examples. One of them is California, which before they had term limits was the state was pretty good, but after they got term limits in, the state just went crazy wild. And the reason it went crazy wild was because these legislators would come from Stockton or whatever. They'd come to the legislature. They'd be in the legislature for 12 years or whatever. Just they don't even they weren't even able to learn what the ropes were. By that time, they're out, and the new guy comes in. He doesn't know what's going on, so he ends up being led around by the lobbyists and the the administrators, the bureaucrats who have been there forever. So they just become puppets of those people who we like even less than the politicians. So, at any rate, there is that. I'm not fond of term limits.
What about the ID card?
Yeah, yeah. The only argument that I have about the ID card, it's not an argument so much as it is a worry that then the ID card can be used to identify who you are, and it just becomes more of a. I mean, it's like a social security card. They made a social security when they originally did social security cards. They go, this will never be used for ID. It can never be used for ID because they recognize that. Yeah, Marty.
Why can't it just be your driver's license or your state ID as your ID? Not a national ID, but your state or local, your ID.
Well, yeah, and we do have the real ID law, which various states are.
Not everybody has a driver's license.
I'm sorry?
We have you can get an ID, a state ID.
Right.
Yes.
But,
and it's no charge. It's not going to cost you anything. It's just an ID card.
Right. And they do have, anyway, the federal government does have the real ID law, which if you want to get onto a military base or you want to get into some federal facilities.
Or take a plane shortly.
You have to have a real ID, which can be a passport, or it can have states can
issue them.
Issue real IDs also, but they have there are certain constraints and things, and I'm not sure exactly what they are. But
I got one in California. I changed my regular ID card to a real ID card.
No, real ID. Okay, good.
Last year, so.
Good.
And Marty was right. I mean, it was going to be that you couldn't fly domestically with that one even.
Right.
But that got delayed or with COVID.
Yeah, it's been pushed back.
Still.
Yeah,
but it'll happen.
But yeah, it will happen, and that's why when I travel, I carry my passport because that's a real ID.
Yeah.
So anyway, however, what we're talking about particularly, I think, Bob, is having to have an ID when you vote.
Right.
And that's specifically what we're talking about. And I think that that's an excellent idea, that you have to have some kind of ID when you vote. I myself prefer retina scans. I think that should really be.
Oh, no.
Are you serious?
No.
There is nobody going to mistake you for anybody but Howard Steninger.
That might be good. I don't know.
Right. Exactly.
Depends on what I'm up to.
True. All right. Any other ideas for?
Did you? I have a question about real ID. Did you have to present like a utility bill with your real estate address on it?
I did, yeah.
I did. Oh, you're talking to Joel.
Yeah.
Well, to anybody, but I mean, I know I did in California. Yeah. To answer the question.
Yeah, and in Oregon, I found out what I have to do to get a real ID, which is have a utility bill and and a number of things to be able to get a real ID. But then I decided not to. I'm just going to do my passport.
Yeah, you can get a passport card. It's just as easy to carry. So
yeah. Okay. Any other ideas for
abolish the Fed? Back to abolish the Fed. Teresa, cheer me.
Yes.
Well,
Well,
that's kind of in line with the other one, to borrow money, because that's what the Fed was created for.
yeah,
I just on that line, I just finished 2 days ago an excellent book about the Fed called The Creature from Jekyll Island.
Oh,
Yes.
yeah.
Right.
Wow, that's excellent.
It was quite good.
I'll poo-poo it though.
What's that?
It's missing a bunch of data. I read it a dozen years ago. It's got some good points, but it's missing some real important data. One of the most important pieces of data out of there is that 95% of the interest on the dollar goes right back into the U.S. Treasury, and that's left out of that book.
Okay.
Say that again, please. 95% of
95 to 98%. You can public knowledge. So if you go into the Federal Reserve's website, you can order their annual. They're basically audited every year. So they put out an annual report every year, and it shows you somewhere in the middle of the book. It shows you where the money went, how it's spent, the profits, how much the Federal Reserve gets to keep, and how much goes back into U.S. Treasury. The U.S. dollar, last one I checked, I think was 2015. U.S. dollar, the interest on it was $102, $104 billion, of which 97% of it went back to the U.S. Treasury.
I have contrary data. I mean, I'm not disputing the report that they issued, but it was a big idea of Ron Paul's to audit the Fed.
Yeah.
And they finally audited selected time periods like 1913, I don't know, 1945, and somewhere near to present time. But they didn't get it chronological from the beginning to the present.
I have a copy of the chronological from 1914 forward to probably the 1915, because I haven't received, even though I ordered one sometime this year, I didn't receive it.
Huh.
So, I used to get them every year, and I know Ron Paul's statue on that, but I always thought it was kind of funny because it's audited by the Board of Governors every year, and it's called it's effectively a comprehensive annual financial report that every government agency, every public corporation has to produce every year. It shows you where the money is, where it comes from, and where it goes.
Is it like a balance sheet of every transaction, or is it a summary of some sort?
No, it's kind of a summary. Your counties put them out. They're called CAFRs for short, CAFR, Comprehensive Annual Financial Reports.
okay.
Good, thank you.
So, any other proposals for constitutional amendments? Going once, going twice? Very good. Now, we've completed all of that stuff. So we're going to pick up and start doing, what do we want to do next? The
Articles of
Papers
Confederation.
Been suggested, and
I was
also
thinking-
the Articles of Confederation have been suggested.
Yeah.
How about the book Common Sense?
We could do the book Common Sense.
Yeah, this was the book that
No, I know.
radicalized the colonies, and big opinion leader.
Yeah, I know. It was the runaway bestseller of 1776.
Yes.
What would be the reason to study the Articles of Confederation? I'm just curious, since that was a failure and we're not operating under it.
History.
It would be to show where we came from, so that some of the some of the things that are in the Constitution, you'll go, oh, in the Confederation it was different and it didn't work, and this is what we're doing now with the Constitution because it's different than what that was. That's really the only value of it. It's fairly short.
Okay.
We can do that or not, or I'm kind of inclined to do the Federalist Papers myself.
Yeah, I know.
I'm excited about those.
Yeah,
You wouldn't want to do the first Articles of Confederation. That was the first government of the United States.
I'd rather do that first and then do the Federalist Papers next year.
Yeah, I'd be up for that.
John, you got to keep going.
Okay.
And maybe the Constitution of the Confederate States of America. That would be an interesting, see what they thought about the FedGov back in
I think
1860.
I think we may let you do that, Howard.
Marty, was that in that book you sent me
All right.
about
So
constitutions?
we basically have a proposal to do Articles of Confederation and then the Federalist Papers. Is that
I'd go for that.
Yeah.
okay? Teresa, yes or no?
Yes.
Okay. Bob, yes or no?
Yes.
All right, Joel?
Yes.
Okay. Christian, do I need to ask you?
No, I'm fine either one. I'm not gonna be available next weekend.
Well, I was planning on starting it in the new year,
Okay.
Good.
taking the month of
December of.
February, taking the month of whatever this month is, December off.
So if we're going to do the Federalist Papers, will we go? I mean, I pulled my volume off my bookshelf that I haven't read yet. So
Okay, well,
I'm going through all of them.
Yes, we're gonna go, yeah, we're gonna do all of them, but I want to do that. I don't have the
There's
book.
like 87 of them or something.
Yeah, there's 87 of them, but I want to use
Are
the,
we doing the anti-federalist papers concurrently?
no.
Do
But you
have a
can
book
read them.
want to get?
Any of the Federalist Papers bring up the anti-federalist
Viewpoints.
arguments because they are arguing against the points that are there. And these are the ones that, Christian, you just grabbed something.
I just grabbed my Federalist Papers. There's 85. 85 numbers. So,
Okay.
and some of them are quite long.
Yes, and some of them are quite long. Some of them will take more than 1 week. Absolutely.
Yes.
We'll be here for doing this for decades.
Yeah, right.
John, is there a guidebook or something that you recommend that we get?
Yes, and you know what I'm going to do is I'm going to,
You send it out to us.
yeah, I'm going to send it out to you. And I was also going to send you something else as well. But all right, but anyway, we're going to do the Articles of Confederation first because it's pretty short.
Perfect.
Great.
All right, everybody happy,
Yeah.
Yes.
or at least reasonably so, Bob? All right.
Yes.
All right. Thank you very much. I will see you
Next year.
year.
Merry Christmas.
Merry
Thank
Merry
you.
Christmas. Happy New Year.
Good job.
Thank
New
you.
Year. Bye-bye.
Happy Christmas and New Year to all of you.
Thank you.
Same back.
Well,
Bye.
John, terrific. Thank you so much.
Oh, you're
Excellent.
welcome.
Thank you.
All right. We'll see
Discussion.
you later.
Later,
Bye-bye.
Gator. Bye-bye.
Bye.